Hey guys, in part one of this series of our Instagram clone, we got this pretty good UI down. We have a flat list rendering these post components to make kind of a user feed, and it looks decent. We want to eventually basically replace these with some dynamic objects instead of the fake ones we mocked up locally, but it's all going to use the same UI and components. It's just a matter of dropping in the proper objects from the network resource. So before we get there has to be some kind of idea of navigation. We talked about it briefly in the last part, but I just want to talk about navigation for a little. So if you are on a website and someone sends you a link to like your email, right? And you click that link and then you hit the back button, you expect to go back to where you were before you click the link. Now just for an example though, let's say I have like this Instagram feed here, and let's just say someone links, or you like a deep link to the individual post. Let's say there's an individual post page, right? And you load that post. You expect like to be able to, usually there's a kind of like a back button here. And when you go back, you're not going back to where that link came from because you're another app. I know Apple sometimes drops that little thing up here, but in terms of the app, you go back. You want to go to your main feed, and if you're not used to mobile development, it's a very like subtle difference, but I think if you think about it, it's something you've done 1,000 times, and then you're like, oh, that makes sense. So it's a little different from the web. So in the web, you have like a pure URL structure. When you go back, as a user, you expect to go back to the exact URL you came from prior. While in mobile, that's not really always the case. You have certain expectations for navigating in the app, and I think it's just a kind of a way things have developed, and that's at this point that's what we expect. So just to reiterate, like if I get a link to a post, like a specific Instagram post, so picture this expanded with some more info and a back button up here. When I hit that back button, I want to go back to the main app, even though I wasn't already in the app at that point. So the navigation between mobile and web, there's these subtle differences like that, but it's a few different things like that which requires a different kind of navigation pattern. And right now the main library used by React Native is React Navigation. And if you check the React Native docs, it's actually the recommended library. It's not actually a part of React Native. It's a third-party library built by the community, and I think Facebook has some people working on it too. But it's very important to note that it's a third-party library. It just happens to be the recommended one by Facebook in the React Native docs, and it's pretty good. And just to give you more of like a backstory, there's been like some, I guess I'll call it controversy in the past about navigation. Basically, since React Native's existed, there's been 5 or 6 different recommended libraries, so it's been changing a lot. And this seems to be the most. This seems to be like the solution going forward at this point. And again, I don't want to. Well, I'll call it a controversy, but a lot of people complain and say the API changes a lot. It's they want the library to be better, this and that. But at the same time, it does everything you need for the most part. And there's sometimes things you run into and you need to figure out a way around it, and that's part of being a developer, though. The library can't just fix everything for you. And the other thing is, if you were going to go make your own, I guarantee you it wouldn't be as good. So it's kind of like work with what's there, and work within their patterns. If there's something you can't do, then you got to figure a way around it. You're a developer. That's why you're getting paid. If the library did everything, they probably wouldn't need you or need someone with advanced skills. So anyway, overall, I think the library is pretty good. The point is, it is changing, but it's getting better while it's changing, and I would recommend it at this point in time. So check it out. You could read the guide. The guides are pretty good. They just redid this maybe 2 months ago, but they're pretty good. And so basically, just to let me zoom in here. Well, this is not zooming in, but we have this idea of, I'll just make my font really big, font bigger. All right, so we have this idea of like picture like a login page, right? So you go to your app, the first thing you see is your login page or sign up, right? Then we're going to go to the main app. And then from within the main app, we have, let me pull up the screenshot from yesterday. I think it's this one. Okay, so you have this TabNavigator with different stuff. For us, we're going to keep it simple, and we're going to have our feed, profile, and the camera, right? So we're only going to have 3 tabs. So we're going to have these 3 tabs, and clearly I have some OCD here, but I'll just let it go. I missed those code editor tabs. Okay, so basically, if you think about it, we kind of have like 2 different almost like stacks of the application, right? Like you have to go to this login sign up page before we get to this main app, right? So these 2, like picture this as 2 halves right here. So we have this first one, the login sign up, and then this here is going to be our second half of the app. So our first navigator is going to be at the root level, and we're going to have a SwitchNavigator. And so that kind of is going to navigate between these 2 stacks, 1, 2 here. And then at the second level here, so in our main app, we need some way to navigate between these. We're going to have a TabNavigator. So now we have 2, this is what I was talking about, it's a little different than web, because now we have these 2 different kinds of nested navigators. So from login to main app, we're going to use the SwitchNavigator, and there's also what's called a StackNavigator. And what this is let's say we had like 10 different, let's say when we go to our profile, we need 10 different screens in there. They would probably be in like a stack. Or let's say we're updating some kind of setting, and there's like a long menu, that's like a stack. So this used to be a StackNavigator, but they came up with the SwitchNavigator, and I actually have not yet used it. I think it's probably only like a month old, and I haven't started a brand new client project in the last month. I'm usually working on some like longer ones, but basically the SwitchNavigator was made to help with the idea of everyone was using the StackNavigator to handle this login problem, and the StackNavigator can have maybe 20 screens in the stack, while the SwitchNavigator is meant to solve the problem of like there's only 2 states, like you're logged in or you're not. So it's kind of like if you're not logged in, you're on this page. Once you're logged in, you're on this page. So it's kind of like a simplified API and handles some other kind of like edge cases that I don't think we'll get to in this video. But I think the important thing to note is to try to see like this structure here. Like at the first level, we're going to have these 2 navigators at the same level, and then once we go into the main app, we're going to have another, some more navigation. So they're going to be kind of nested, and that's going to be important. But I hope that kind of explains it a little. And again, I personally have not used the SwitchNavigator, so I'm going to have to check the docs as we go along. But I just want to kind of address something in terms of checking the docs and stuff, because I'll watch some videos online and they'll build the app in 4 minutes, and it's like, well, I don't think anyone really does that, because let's say you work on some large apps where there's 2 developers working on some project for a year. You probably only implement the navigation from scratch once or twice a year. You're not just doing it. You're going to learn to work with the library well, but you're not going to just off the top of your head just throw the app together. So I think that's kind of discouraging when you watch stuff like that, because you're kind of like, oh, they're so fast, they'll never be that fast. But they're usually rehearsing it to make a terse, informative video to teach. But I feel like it kind of has the opposite effect. I don't know, just an aside there. All right. Anyway, the main point here is we need 2 navigators, and this one's going to be nested. So there's going to be 2 levels of navigation. And I mentioned yesterday or whenever we last filmed that this tab, this here is going to go. So this header here was kind of like a temporary header, and the same as we're missing that tab bar on the bottom. So the navigator is going to provide those for us. So we'll get to that. And the other good thing about the library is, again, if you're new to mobile development, you may not be aware, but so if you're on iOS, they have, if you're on an iPhone, you've probably seen the back arrow. It's like this. I guess they call it a chevron, and that's kind of that's very typical in most apps, either blue, usually blue or gray or something. And then Android's kind of like a different icon, for example. So it's not a huge deal, but you kind of want to stick to the platform guidelines and semantics. So you don't really want to use the Apple back on Android. Again, it's not a huge deal, but it's better to stick with the right, I guess, the recommended best practice if you can. And so a lot of this library, React Navigation, it handles all this for you. So by default, when you're on Android, it has this is the back arrow versus this for iOS. And the same with the headers and the tabs. They try to make them match the platform guidelines and what's typically used. And you're just using a single API as the user, so you don't really have to worry about that, which is nice and kind of, sometimes difficult working with new APIs and stuff, but it's worth learning because you just have this single point of configuration and you can hit both platforms. Okay, so I'm trying to think what order I want to go in here. Okay, let's just get our navigator working so we have 2 tabs we can go back and forth between real quick. So I'm going to open up my editor, and remember, React Native start your bundler, and React Native run iOS, or if you're on Android, run Android. If you're on Expo, I believe it's just npm run start. Okay. All right, so what was that first screen? I actually do not remember. Oh, they might have a default splash screen. Okay, I think there's a default splash screen now, so that's why I was like, what is that? Yeah, see? Okay. I thought for some reason I thought that we had another screen and I got nervous because we don't have any navigation set up yet. So I'm going to go to our source directory, and right now we have this instaclone.js with all this info. This is really like kind of our feed, right? So I'm going to select all and copy this and go to my components, and in this screens directory I'm going to create an index file, and I'm going to create I'm going to call this main feed and just import export here. And again, the reason we do this is because let's say we have 20 screens that we need to set up the navigation for. We can import them all in that one line with the submodule syntax like this, as opposed to referencing each individual file. So that's why we do that. And in this main feed, just paste everything from before, and we see this config here is off. We just need to adjust our directory, and we need to adjust here our directory /components. I believe it's back one directory now. Okay, that should be good. And let's go to instaclone, delete all our styles, get rid of this feed, get rid of this config. 1 second. I think all we need is this view. I'll leave style sheet for now because those could come in handy. So basically we want kind of an empty component. And let's import our screens real quick. What do I call it? Main feed. Now let's just see if this works. Remember last time we had an issue with the we had an issue last time with the flex getting passed down, so I just want to make sure this works. Export default class import ./components/screens. Did I not save this? Okay. Okay, so it's working fine. Yeah, I just forgot to save this file. So make sure you have everything saved. If not, you'll see something like that, letting you know. Okay, so we have all our imports working. Now let's just pretend we have another screen. So I'm going to call it login. And then we're going to create that screen here. And it's typical screen component setup. And basically what we want to do is we're just trying to throw together a random just page so we can get some sort of navigation going, and then we can figure out specifics of authentication after. And let's get a view and whatnot in here. And just so this doesn't get lost, I'm just going to try to align it center. Okay, so just to make sure this page is rendering something, let's go back to our InstaClone here. And this is what I was saying before about the imports. So now we just can import it right here as a submodule, as opposed to explicitly having to list every file. And I'm just going to make sure that this works, which it doesn't, so that's why we check these things. Render login 7. Okay, so it works. Just something with the hot reloading was off. And let's just align content center, align items. Okay, so here's our login page, and what I'm gonna do is I'm just going to turn this into a, for now, a touchable. Again, we're just trying to keep it as simple as possible until one step at a time. So I'm just going to turn this to a touchable. So that works, and we're going to give it on press. I'm going to say on press login. And we're going to make a function here called login. I gotta fix these spaces. Okay, and here I'm just going to alert. Again, I take everything one step at a time, make sure our stuff's working. You know, we don't want to implement our entire navigation and find out there's some sort of issue. For example, this is not working. Whoops. On press this dot login. Alright, so that's working. Just make sure to call the function here. So I forgot that. Okay. This is to actually call the function. So on press now we want to navigate to the next page. So that's going to go here. So I'm literally going to just pull up the docs. Again, this is I believe in the last month, because I actually was dealing with this authentication problem. I was using a StackNavigator, and they came up with this SwitchNavigator idea. So I'm literally going to just check the docs and see how to do it. Maybe under API, SwitchNavigator. See, there's very little info even here. Like, this is the entire docs because it's very new. But it looks like it's similar to the StackNavigator. So what we're gonna do is install. First, we gotta install the library. Like I said, it's a third-party library, so we gotta actually install it. So npm I or yarn add, whatever you're using, React Navigation, REACT dash NAVIGATION. Just because I know this is kind of hard to see, I'll just zoom in first. Yeah, so once you get that, at the top here, we're going to import. Oops, sorry, let's go back to our root of our app. SwitchNavigator and TabNavigator from React Navigation. Here, I'm just going to leave this up for a second so you guys can see. I know it's hard to see in the terminal. That did not help. Okay, so yeah, I'm just so you guys can see the package name. It's very confusing because there's React Native Navigation. I don't know. There's a million of them. So Native Navigation. So React Router. Anyway, all right. So we have our library here, and if you look at the docs, basically you declare this new navigator, and you basically map these keys to different screens, and you pass different options and stuff. So the options pertain to things like the back button and different paths you can define. But to start, we're going to say const and then we're going to pass in, let's just try to give it a key and the screen and see if it works or not. So main stack is a SwitchNavigator, and I'm going to give a key of login, which is going to map to our login, and main is going to map to our main app. Let's just, and now main feed, sorry. And right here, instead of returning login, we're going to return this main stack. And let's go to, so it's rendering, so we're configuring probably something, right? Let's just flip this around and put the main stack at top and see what happens. All right, so that's showing up first. So it appears we probably have everything installed and working. Our app's not crashing. We want to be able to navigate from login to the main feed now. So let's go to main feed, login, and we need to figure out what to do here. So the way the library works, and it's just kind of advanced, so I don't want to get like too far into it, is it uses like higher order components to basically kind of wrap. Imagine we're basically putting a component around our existing stuff, and it's giving it these extra properties. So we have these extra functions that we can use, and we use all of them. Like the reason I explained how it's kind of like just giving us this stuff is because we're not importing any of this stuff, and we have access to it. So that's why it seems kind of weird. So if you do this.props.navigation, there's all sorts of different like methods that we can use, but the most basic one is this.props.navigation.navigate, and here I'm going to say navigate to our main app. So if I refresh everything, and it does not work. Oh, it's because we got to use the key. So if you go back here, I call this main. So let's try that. See that? So this.props.navigation, this navigation prop is given to us through the React navigation higher order component. Again, don't want to get too far into it. Just imagine that it gives us these extra like functions that we can use. And there's all sorts of stuff, but for our purposes, this is good. So we have some way to navigate between these screens now, which is cool. And then here, so we navigate to main. That maps to our key right here. That's working. But what if instead of this main feed, we want this to be like the tab setup? So like I said, we need to nest. So we just basically handled this to this part. So what we're going to do next is set up this part, the feed profile camera, and then we'll set up actual logging in to navigate between the two. So we just didn't set up this part. We're basically just going to make a new navigator here, and then we just drop it where this used to be. So I'm going to say const TabNavigator, and then so we have our main feed, right? We're going to have camera. It's going to be the camera page. And profile is going to be our profile page. Okay, so we have these three components. They don't, well, main feed we need to import camera and profile. So let's do that quick. And then we're just going to make a placeholder real quick. And then we'll kind of have a good idea also where we're going with the app. So import, that should crash. Okay, so go to your screens, just create real quick. Profile, camera. All right. And just create those real quick. And what I'm going to do is just copy and paste what's in login just to make it as quick as possible. And just change the name up here. You could just leave this navigation stuff for now. I don't really. We'll cut it out in a second. We just need empty screens basically. Profile and camera. All right, so if you refresh that, oh, we didn't actually get up yet. So if you refresh that, clearly all your imports and stuff are working because it's not crashing. But go back to instaclone here, and then here where we link main to main feed, let's just see if we can link it to this whole this whole navigator. So I'm going to just write tabs, and let's see what happens. Cool. All right, I'm going to pull this over here. So if you look, we have this TabNavigator now, but well, these all say login, so let's just change that quick to demonstrate. Let's see, that is the login page. All right, this we're just going to say profile, future profile page. That's going to be future camera. And so watch. Sorry guys. So we have our login page. We log in, right? And we have these 3 tabs. Now we're navigating, see, future camera, future profile, between the tabs. We could add icons and do all sorts of styling and stuff, but we could circle back to that. I wanna focus on getting the login working. But do you kind of see how we have this nested structure now? So again, we have these two different navigators, and they're nested. So we like all of this is right here now. And then if we needed, let's just say our profile flows, we can make another stack like this. And we can just, let's say we have 10 screens in here, and then we can map this right here. So you could even nest these stacks. So that's kind of the idea behind navigation. For our app, we only need this one nested level. So I'm gonna get rid of this, but I just kind of wanted to show you how you map those and use the key mapping to the components. So here this could be either a regular component or an actual navigator. So we have our login working, and we want to actually log in. So let's go back to our login page, and this is good because we get to use some new methods. So new components. So right here, I'm going to import a text input. And just for fun, after all this talk yesterday about the button, I'm going to import the button so we can see if it's any different than touchable opacity or not. So like that's what I was saying. We kind of had a button. You just wrap anything in a touchable, but apparently now there's a new button. So we'll see what it looks like. Okay. So here where we log in, we don't want to just log in. We basically want to check our credentials and make sure they're good, and then log in. And we're also going to need to create a profile. So I'm trying to think how I want to do this. Okay, we'll have a little link that says, no profile, sign in here type thing. I mean, sign up here. And then what we'll also do is that's going to be in a StackNavigator, so we'll get that other nested layer I was talking about. But first, well, I guess we don't have any accounts, so we need to start with the register page. So let's go back to our navigator, and we're going to need that SwitchNavigator. Sorry, that StackNavigator. So again, the StackNavigator is pretty much exactly what we're doing now with the SwitchNavigator. It's just less. It's more discrete. There's only 2 cases. You can be in either stack based on some value, which we'll get to. So SwitchNavigator. Tips, okay. So I say intro stack equals StackNavigator. And we're going to have login. Register. Let's create register real quick. So in terms of like the styling and stuff on those on like the TabNavigator, you could pretty much have it looking however you want, and you just have to look at the docs. There's just certain syntax. You can basically pass in certain options. I think I'll get to it, but for now I want to focus on some like better concepts because it's kind of simple. It's just reading through, and there's certain options that you have to provide and whatnot, and it's just a matter of conceptually it's not hard, it's just more tedious, if that makes sense. So I'm going to take this login screen and again paste it here just so we have something to work with, and I'm just going to change this text here to just say actually no, this is fine for now. I'm going to change the text on login for a second just to say no account, no user, and just show you navigating between these screens. Register, what did I call this? Insta clone. Register. Oh. Class register extends components. Alright. That should be good to go. Oh, here on our main stack, we need to map the intro stack now. And I'm going to call this intro or preload or auth. I've seen all sorts of. But so look, now you'll see this bar up here. So by default, StackNavigator gives you this bar. We can leave it, get rid of it, but for now I'm just going to leave it. But watch, when we go here and we navigate to the, like this is going to be the register page. Hey, you don't have an account, register. It gives us this back button by default, and it's pretty full functioning, and again, it's once you get into more advanced use cases, it's pretty useful. And like I was saying, if you pulled up an Android, it wouldn't be this blue chevron, it would be like the traditional arrow, and that's all done for you, which is nice. And the same as the tabs. I believe they put the tabs up top on Android, like while ours are on the bottom, which is the Android default. So there's a lot of little useful stuff that comes. And again, it's a little more difficult to, let's say, put the icons in. You got to read through the docs and find how to do it. But it's a little extra effort for a good API, and it's worth using. Definitely, you do not want to roll your own. Okay, so just to reiterate, we added this extra stack now. So now we have like three stacks going on. We have our tab stack and our intro stack, and those live in our root. Like our root of our project is our main stack, and then so the tab stack is kind of this sorry, the intro stack is this StackNavigator, which has this bar on top, back button. You're probably familiar for any like profile setting type stuff. We're going to probably eventually hide all this, but yeah, so that's this, and then that's the StackNavigator, and then the TabNavigator is this guy, which you're probably used to, and this is what Instagram is using. And then we have our SwitchNavigator at our root that kind of links these two up. So we basically need to make sure that if we're logging in and then we get to the main app. So in order to do that, we need to use the text input, as I was saying. So let's go back to register, and we're going to start with register. Text input, and so basically what we want to do is send credentials to server if sign up success. Then we're going to navigate to the page, else error message. So just to give you an idea what we're doing, and I'll call this register, and then on press here I'm going to say register, and I'm going to change this back to a view and get rid of this on press for a second, because we're going to bind that to our button view. And let's just drop in two text inputs. And a button, and see what it looks like. And just for our working purposes, I don't have to keep navigating back and forth. I'm going to just put register at the top of this intro stack for now. And let's see. Title prop of a button must be a string. Okay, so the button must need a required to have this title prop. What is this? Let me close all these out too, because we're getting too much going on. All right. Okay, so we have our sign up button. I don't see our text input showing up, so I'm guessing they have a required height. Let's see. Styles.input, and do we have our style sheet? Nope, make sure to import your style sheet. And at the bottom here, just make your styles real quick. I'm just going to say height 50, just to see if that's what's causing our issues. Button is not defined. Sorry, I keep having issues just with the extra large font here to help you guys out. Okay. Alright, so let's just check the docs. Maybe it's just input, I don't remember. React, native, okay. Text input. Okay, so they give it a height on change text and a value. So let's just give it those things quick and see if that helps us. Text input, register. Okay. Oh, that's why. Sorry. Input. And put our height in here. All right. We can't have a blank on change text. Okay. On press is required by a button, so that we already have our touchable stuff, which is going to make that easy. Just register. So that's one error con. Is mounted. Okay, let's give our text inputs a width of 100%. Oh, they are here. See, they're over here. We just can't see because the background color. Okay. Let's give them let's give this whole screen like some sort of background color or something. I'm gonna use maybe like that pink from the yesterday on the hearts. What was that? This one. Yeah, that's fine. At least we can see our text inputs now. And let's give these text inputs some margin on the left and right. Margin horizontal. Wish I could spell better. Alright, so give some padding there. I'll bump this up. And then let's give it some background color so we can actually see. I'm going to make it white. And let's give it some margin bottom. I'm just trying to put some styling in so we can see better as we're working. Padding. Don't know why our Alright, let's give these a placeholder. I believe that is the prop placeholder. And this is gonna be username. And this one is gonna be password. And there's also this horizontal. Let me just see what this margin. So there's padding, margin horizontal, horizontal, horizont. Not sure why this is not working for me, but alright, this is fine for now. So we have this username and the password, and one thing is we want to fix our password to be secure, or like to look like a password field. So what you do there is secure. I believe we can just pass it as a boolean. Is secure. Oh, secure text entry. That's what it is. So if anytime there's like these Boolean properties, you could just pass them like that. You don't have to actually say true or false. You'll see now we have a password field, a username field, and I'm just going to fix this text. It's going to drive me crazy. You know, we can put this here, take this, and it's going to go to our TabNavigator. And I believe we can just pass it to our navigator and have it on top. I'm going to say register. So API stack title. Okay, I don't feel like getting to this real quick, but sorry, I'm jumping all over. But anyway, let's just get this signing up. So we need to give this is what's called a controlled component. So when you enter this text in here, we have no way right now of getting the text. So what we do is we give a function on change text to the text input, and that keeps track of the text, and then we also give it a value, and we tell the text input what its value is. So really all of this is like an illusion, and we're storing it in our local state, not in this field. So we're going to make a constructor and say this dot state equals, we're going to have credentials, we're going to have login, it's going to be blank, and password is going to be blank. And login, password, okay. So what we're going to do is make a function called update text. And what it's going to do is it's going to take a field as well as the text, and it's going to update our local text. So one second here. Yeah, we could just do it in line actually. It's probably a little easier. So no, it's too complex because, okay, sorry. All right, let's just start with this. So on change text, or I'm going to learn it out because it's too hard with the video to see the console. And right here, let's do on change text. This dot change text. What did I just call this? Update text. Bind this. This dot update text. Bind this. think we need to pass in the text here. Let's try that. This update text or text. I'm on the wrong one. Sorry, guys. All right, so there we go. So it gets this text, right? And we need to do something with it. So by default, the prop here requires us to give a function with this text here, and then with that text we can tell it what to do. So we're calling this .update text, and we pass it our text. We also need to tell it what field it is because we're sharing this common function. So let's do this, and we're going to call this password to match this field, and the other one login to match this field. And we're going to do the same thing here, except this is going to be login. And then here we need to just have an extra field argument that we're going to take in. And what we want to do is say let credentials equal object.assign this.state.credentials. And then, so that's our current credentials. And then we're going to update whichever one we're updating. So we're going to say credentials subfield is going to be our new text. And then we're going to set state. And we're going to say credentials. I'll just call this new credentials to make it easier to see. Credentials is new credentials. And the reason we have to use this object.assign has to do with the way React works and object equality. Basically, if you just tried to set like one of these values without doing this, because it's a nested object, React can't tell the object has changed. That's why we have to make this new object. And it's a little, I don't want to get too much into it, but basically you need anything that's like anything you're setting state on like a nested object like this, you just need to make sure that the original object at the root of the state is a new actual object. Because if you just say this.state.credentials.login equals something, it's the same object in memory, like it's referencing the same space in memory, so React can't tell the object's change and won't update. But when we do object.assign, we're literally making a copy of the object, and then we set the copy to our new value, and then we set state to the key to the new entire object, and React knows it changes, so it can automatically update for us. So like before, when we weren't doing this, first we need to actually set the values on these. So this value here is going to be this.state.login. So again, we're taking control of the values, and like, so when you put the text in there, we're telling it what to display. We're kind of like hijacking it. And that's what's called a controlled component as opposed to an uncontrolled component. It's preferable to have them controlled. Okay, so look here, we're explicitly setting the password to that and the login to that. And what I did is I got rid of the set state so that you can see what I'm talking about. Credentials is not defined. Well. So we're just going to keep losing our well, it's working as an uncontrolled, but as you see when we re-click, we kind of lose control, like it loses focus. Anyway, it's not what we want, is my point. Let me turn the spell check off is actually another annoying thing. So it's kind of nice. Just the doc, like I said, the docs are good. React Native text input. So do you see like the spell check thing that popped up? It's going to be really annoying if you're doing a password, right? So spell check, you can just turn it to false, or maybe it's autocorrect. Autocorrect. And there's all sorts of props. That's what I'm saying. Check the docs. There's good stuff in there. So I'm just turning this autocorrect to false quick. There's probably a whole bunch of these we want to turn to false, but all right. And basically what I want to do now is when I hit sign up here, I just want to alert the credentials, see what we're working with. So register before I navigate to main. I just want to alert this .state or stringify. So Ryan, password 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And you see here, it's hard to see, but we have login and my name and then my password in a JSON object. So this is exactly what we want. So we can ship these off to the server now to create an account. So that's going to be the next step. I'm going to take a 2-minute break real quick, grab some coffee, and we get back. We're going to basically send this off to the server, and then we're going to set up the login. So we can sign up, log in, and that's going to be what lets us into our application. So we just basically set up our auth flow, and we have this nice StackNavigator, TabNavigator, whatnot, but we have no way to actually authenticate a user. So we have right here, we're alerting out our stringified credentials from the input, and they look good. So it's what we want. Now, the next two parts of authentication are, one, we need to actually send these somewhere via HTTP request, and two, we need to have somewhere to send them to. So I'm going to start with the second part, to have somewhere to send them to, and then we can test if it's working or not. So what we want to do is basically, if you want to do any kind of authentication, you need some sort of backend. There needs to be somewhere to store the user and authenticate the user. There's no way around it. You know, it's required. So I know some of you maybe are more front end or mobile developers, but we're going to spin up a very simple backend in probably about 10 minutes, I would say. So let's just do that now. And we're going to use Turbo again for that. So what I want everyone to do is, I'll just do it with you real quick. Okay, so go to turbo360.co, and you should have signed up in the first video because we were using that CDN. But if not, I'm just going to show the process again. go to the bottom, or if you're expanded, this will be on the right up here. And you just want to make a new app. I'm going to call it Insta API. And you're going to create the application. And now we have this app here. All we need right now is this right here, this app ID. So copy that. And what we want to do now is go to our terminal. And all right. And what we're going to do is, you want to let me blow this up. What you want to do is globally install the Turbo CLI. This is basically going to scaffold the API for us very quickly, so it's going to be very useful. So npm i-g for global turbo-CLI. And that shouldn't take too long. Sudo, you may have to do sudo, which is a permissions thing. Asks for your password. That's your your local password, ending with sudo, like what you log in with. Okay. Then on your desktop, you're going to run turbo new. I'm just going to call this API. CD into it and run npm install. And then you're going to run turbo dev server just to make sure it's working. All right, and go to localhost 3000. Okay, you should see something like this. That means everything is set up properly. You know, if you haven't got to this point, just pause for a second, reinstall your CLI, npm install turbo dev server. It might take longer if you have an older computer, so just pause it, catch up. Okay, so let's open a new window real quick. And again, I'm being quick here because I know the focus of the series is React Native, but we do need the API, so I'm just trying to quickly get something up and running on that. I think there's plenty of other videos if you want to do more like Node Express backend stuff, but we need an API, and this is the quickest solution. So I'm going to open up that API, right? And if you go to the, if you ever use Node Express, this will be very easy. If not, I'm just going to go quickly. If you go to the routes API.js, there right here, there's this these routes defined. And so what we can do is, this is going to be a variable, right? So /API/ resource test confirmation success. Okay, so basically this is like for our individual resources. We'll get to this later when we have to fetch the photos and stuff, but for now I think the important thing to see is that this is working and it's giving us some JSON, right? So we're going to make a new route in our API called post. So just copy and paste that, and it's router.post, and the link, where the reference is going to be, I'll call it sign up. So basically we can send a sign up request to /API/sign up, and just to test in the browser to make sure this is working, I'm going to make this a get, and let's just try that. Okay, so that's working. All right, so but this has to be a post. But so it's going to be this same route slash API slash sign up is where we want to post our credentials to. So if we jump back to the Turbo documentation, they have a built-in user management section. And basically what we want to do is right here. And normally I wouldn't copy and paste, but the goal of this video is to work on React Native stuff. And some of you are probably not that familiar with some of the Node Express stuff, so we'll just copy and paste. So copy this, and you see here we define our user. Let me fix this. process.env.turbo_app_id. So we have access to this turbo variable. We just need to define our app ID, which we'll do in a second. But go back into here, paste all that in there. So we have turbo.createUser, rec.body. So this rec.body is going to be those credentials. That's what we're sending. And we just want to make sure that the documentation, what they want the user fields to be. So they have it as, they have password and username. Or no, they have email. So this rec.body is what's coming from our app here. So we just want to change this login real quick to email, because I believe that's what they're checking for. Now let's jump back to our API. So turbo.createUser, and again we're still missing that app piece. We'll get to in a second to link it right here. I just want to kind of go through this. Create user with the body of our post, which is going to be those exact credentials once we send them. And then if success, render success. If error, confirmation fail, error.message. So that looks good. So this looks good. We need to do now, that last piece is that app ID that I told you we needed. Let's just jump back. Copy this, and then in your terminal, make sure you're in the root of that you're in your project, and you want to do turbo app, and you want to paste that. And then what we're going to do to see if it's working is say turbo deploy. And basically this is going to deploy to a staging server. So we have an API, and then we're going to try to hit that and see if it's working. While that's deploying, let me just show you guys our thing again. So this point here is really going to be /API/signup. And then we give it a function, function rec_res. Yep, okay, create user with rec.body. Okay, so let's just, this is right here. So you're going to get a callback URL. Copy that and paste it in your browser. Okay, so that's working. And made up resource. This is one of the existing API routes, just takes nothing. So it looks like it's working. We can't test the post in the browser though, so that's why we gotta jump back to our app now. So this appears to be working. Great. Let's see if we can actually create a user. So let's go back to our application here. And so remember, right now when we hit register, it alerts those credentials. Instead of alerting them, we want to send them to the backend that we just created. And then if success, we want to for now we'll just say alert success, but we really want to go into the application. If not a success, alert the error. So according to the React Native documentation, they now have a built-in, not now, I've been on projects where we've used like Super Agent or Axios, but as of now, it looks like that everyone fetch is just built in. So that's what we want to do. So if you look here, we have our endpoint, and we're going to do a post, standard headers, except, yep, that looks good. And then for our body, we just want to pass in those credentials right here. I'm going to literally copy and paste this. And what we want to do is we want to import our config. Import config. And we're going to make a variable called base URL, because we're going to have a lot of requests to this, and let's just say then we deploy to our production site. We just want to be able to change it in one spot. So the base URL is going to be, where are we? Too many tabs open. Whatever your URL is. And we're going to come back to our register here, and instead of this endpoint here, we're going to say config.baseURL plus, and we called it sign up, right? Yeah, sign up. Sorry for all the switching around. So again, this is going to allow us to have this URL defined in one place in case we change it later on. You know, maybe we're just using Turbo real quick while we're scaffolding and designing our project, and then the client's backend is ready and they want to use theirs. We just come to one spot and just swap it out for newapp.com or whatever it is. So that's why we want this constant here. All right, so import config, post accept application dot. So this all looks good. Body. Okay, so the body here, I don't know why they stringify it, because ours should already be fine as is, but I'm just gonna leave it for now. Because ours should be fine as it is, but they're stringifying it, so I'm not gonna mess with what they're doing. It seems a little weird, but we'll just see what happens. So our body is going to be our credentials, right? This email, password, and this should return a promise. And I want to alert the data. And again, this is very bad practice. You should be really console logging the data, but it's just kind of harder to see on the screen share, if that makes sense. And let's just try this for now. Okay. So I'm going to make my username. And sign up. Network request failed. Okay. Let's try this one more time. See if there's a better network request failed. All right, so that's not what we want. Guess I'm gonna have to pull up the debugger. So hold on. And let's just console logs. Okay, and let's just see what's going on. Where are we? All right, I'm going to clear this real quick. Base URL is not defined. Okay, so, oh, well, that's that. Base URL, let's make sure that. All right, let's try this again. Network request failed with no further information. Slash API. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to try that on our local machine now, just to so we still have. Let me pull it up. Localhost 3000 slash API slash sign up. Okay, so we have this running on our local host still. So let's go back to our application. And where we have this, that's the other thing with this base URL. If you need to do some debugging, you can come in here. And what we're going to do is just change all of this to localhost 3000. And we get rid of the HTTP because I don't know if that's part of the local host. All right, I'm just going to leave it like this. And what we want to do is go back to our application here. And we just want to console log to see if we're hitting. Like if we're getting our what we expect to see. And let's pull up this terminal here. So this is still running right here, right? So let's see if we see this come through. Again, if you for some reason it's closed down, it's turbo dev server. So now we're on the local host on our server, and we can see what we're sending across. So to help with our debugging. So let's just no suitable slash localhost 3000. Maybe I do need to put the HTTP back. Let's try this again. Okay, so look, I already figured out what happened. We're passing the wrong, we're going to be passing that email, which we think is required. So what happened is I updated the name of our variable here, but I forgot to update the function. Where is it? Here. So let's do that. And let's try this again. All right, we have an email and a password. Okay, now let's jump back to our other route. So this is another useful part of this base URL here. Until you set up like full-fledged configuration environments, it works pretty good. So let's do this here, and what we're going to do is refresh, and let's open up our debugger again, because now we're on the local server, so we have no visibility. Clear this, and let's try. Network request failed. For some reason they don't like our network request. I'm going to try a get just to see if we can get some data. Okay, so let's just try a quick fetch. Let me a quick get just to see if that works. Let me jump back to our simulator, and okay. Config signup. Just make sure I didn't do something dumb like wrong casing. No, that looks good. I'm gonna try one more thing. I'm just gonna pass a username just to see if maybe that is it, and then if not, then we'll do some more debugging. Accept headers. Also, let me get rid of this stringify. I don't know why, I just don't like it, but just see what happens. Sorry, looking for my debugger. I got too many windows open here. unsupported body init type. Okay, so it looks like fetch does want it to be a string, so that's not our issue. Return fetch. I'm going to pause for 1 second while I hash this out real quick. So I figured out what the issue is. So basically, I think as of iOS 9, maybe, I don't recall, by default, xcode is configured to not allow HTTP requests. Everything needs to be HTTPS. Now, there's a good thing and a bad thing. Well, it's just like a temporary bad thing. We just need to change. Well, we need to change our file while we're developing to allow HTTP, and by default, Turbo has free HTTPS, like free SSL. However, it's just the way like the web works. You cannot get a SSL certificate like HTTPS if you don't have a domain. So like the development servers that we're using right now, like the again, everything's free, so it's just a matter of you have to have a domain. But like for our development server, it's HTTP. You need to put in your own domain, and then you can have HTTPS. So I would advise putting in a domain and getting HTTPS. But in the meantime, you can either run it from localhost, or we can just allow HTTP requests. So if you go to your where is it? iOS directory. Oh, and by the way, I'm fairly certain on Android, you probably weren't even having issues. I'm fairly certain they just allow HTTP requests. I could be wrong. If you're having trouble on Android, leave me a comment. I'll go over it, but I'm fairly certain they allow HTTP. Also, it explains why our error messages were so unhelpful. They were just dropping the request. It wasn't even going to the server. So go to your iOS folder and go to instaclone. And in this info.plist, transport security. So you can do this from xcode or right from the text file. Xcode's kind of, I don't want to say bloated, but with the recording here, NS exception allows insecure HTTP loads. Let's try this. App transport security. Okay. So we just want to add this key here. Let's try that. Oh, people are saying they're having the issue on Android too, so I stand corrected. But run it from localhost, get a domain. You should be using HTTPS anyway. I'm using this workaround for now. Transport NS exception domains key NS. Okay. So right here, let's try this. Key true. All right, I'm gonna give that a try, and gonna relaunch my project. And we'll see what happens. If not, we'll just run on localhost for now. Again, the goal here is to get the authentication flow working, not to configure a server. So we'll just go localhost for now if this continues to be an issue. but I think this should resolve it. The thing that worries me is I'm not sure if we rebuilt the whole project. I'm just going to remove it completely and rebuild it. This is basically a security feature. That's why they do that. All right, let's try this again. And I may have lost my debugger. Yes, I don't think this is working. So what I'm going to do is hop into my backend real quick. Just see if it was created or not. Apps, Insta, data store. All right, so we're not in there yet. Give me a second here. I'm just going to rebuild this in xcode one more time, and then we're going to test it out. And wait, maybe I am on the wrong. Nope, we're on the right host. Register. Put my headers back. My credentials. Well, you know, I'm just gonna see if we're hitting the server first. If we don't get that fail, at least we're hitting the server. If not, I think I have to rebuild the project in xcode quick. Network request failed. All right, let's rebuild this in xcode quick. Again, that's in your app. Go to iOS, find the xcode project, and I'm going to remove it real quick. Delete. Delete. Now, while we're at it, I'm going to build it on an iPhone X. If this doesn't work, we're just going to go to localhost for now, and I'll figure out for the next video. I don't want this to impede our goals of today's work, so slowing us down a little, but we get to do some troubleshooting and stuff, so I feel like that's always a useful skill. And a lot of these apps, most of these apps I'm just building as I go, so it kind of gives you a real insight of how the real process works, you know. I'm not doing insta clone in 20 minutes like I was talking about before. Okay, so it does take a while to build the next code, so and while I'm waiting, I'm trying to decide if I want to just put in domain and get some HTTPS or not. I'm tempted to just go localhost because that's going to be an extra step for a lot of people watching. It's going to throw them off to set up the SSL. Again, it's all done for free on Turbo, but if you don't have a domain available, you're going to buy one for $10. So I'm just going to pause this real quick while this goes because it's going to take like 5 more minutes. And I'm not going to make you guys sit there anymore. Solve that HTTPS issue and basically just make sure your base URL here you have HTTP. That I did not do before, so I'm wondering if I didn't even have to rebuild the xcode project. I'm fairly certain that I did, but never know. It could have been this here. Make sure you have HTTP here because we're not on HTTPS. And once you have that set up, go back to our register. I uncommented all the default stuff from the docs, and here we're logging our data and our error messages. So let's open up the debugger. By the way, you'll see I switched to the iPhone 10, and React navigation, actually this is another nice thing, automatically handles this safe area for us, and you'll see down when we get to the tab section as well, if we make it there. Alright, so let's pull that debugger back open, and let's do new user finally at AOL.com, PASSWORD. And I'm saying that out loud because I've done these apps before and I forget what password I put, and then alright, so let's hook up the, okay. Sometimes it just gets frozen, you gotta like PASSWORD. Okay, look, we finally got a success. So we got this success message here, and I'm looking to see if we get our user back as a callback, which I don't see. That's because we need to just real quick go back to our routes. So it's a success, that's good. We just want to adjust one thing in our route. Sorry guys. For our success, well, we should be sending back the data here, so that's okay. Data. Let's just go back to our response real quick. We want to get the user model itself back, so we know our ID and stuff for future purposes. So give me a second. So there, we just created a blank. We'll get back to that. later. Okay. So anyway, though, the point is we get a success message. So um, 41. Although I think our fetch library, if we have an error, there's .json confirmation. I want to try to get this confirmation here. That's what I want, which I'm not getting. So we're creating our users successfully. Let's go back. Look at all these users we just created. That's good. I just want some better communication with the server, basically. I'm trying to get some sort of this information back. So I think it's just something with the fetch API, because it's giving us all our HTTP status back, but I want the actual JSON response back, if that makes sense. So let me just go back here. Full list of properties. Okay, so this is what we want here. We need this extra layer, because the actual response is just the HTTP response. So if our HTTP request doesn't fail, it's giving us that response. We want this right here. So response.json. Okay, let's try this real quick. So here we have our fetch. Let's do then response.json, then JSON response. So it's just anytime you work with like a different library or something, you have to just kind of play around, see what's going on. So basically, just to go back, we are sorry, I got a message. We need to convert this to JSON, and then let's log the JSON. So let's just try that real quick. Let's make sure this is linked up. All right. Okay, look, so this is what we want. This is our user. And basically, we want to basically say, if confirmation success, then proceed. If not, for example, if this user already exists now, or let's just say we send this across. Well, this is very unrestricted in terms of what it allows us to create, which makes sense, but Sorry guys, we may have one more bug and then we'll be so they're not enforcing any uniqueness of users on any value, so that would be something up to us at a later point. But just make sure you go in here, and when we kept changing around email, username, and whatnot, just make sure your value on this input is email, the update change text is email, and the credentials is email. Make sure those all match. And then what we want to do here on the user create is basically we want to make sure that we get the confirmation success back from the server. So we just need to come back into here, and we have this JSON response. Sorry, I just want to pull up the log again. JSON response dot confirmation, that first key. JSON response and response. Say if JSON response dot confirmation is success, if this is success, we want to navigate to the next page. So then we're going to call our this.props .navigation .navigate, and we just have to check what we called it. I believe we called it here main. So we'll navigate to main. Else, for some reason, we're just going to reject new error or throw new error. We want to throw a new error and get to our catch block. Sorry, something went wrong. Please try again. Which brings us down here where that should get logged. So what I want to do now is log in instauser@aol.com with a password. And if this works, we should get to our main app, which did. Okay, so that handles our authentication for our purposes for now, for registering. And again, we probably want to restrict, we probably on our server want to make sure that that username doesn't exist. And if it doesn't, throw an error, or like don't let us create it. That's probably what we should be doing. And maybe I'll get to that in a minute. But first I want to just handle login real quick. So let's go back to our project here, and let's just make a login route real quick. We're going to do almost the same exact thing. Change it to login. And here where we create user, let's check the docs. Should be login. Oh, sorry, I just want to go back here for a second and show you that our user was created right here. So that's working. Storage, documentation, user management, login. And the credentials here, so it's almost the same exact function see email password, and which you would say maybe we should kind of extract this to a common something, which I think is a good idea. But for now, I'm just gonna kind of take the copy and paste for now, just to get it working, and then we can extract if we have time. But so almost the same thing, except we're going to call login. Turbo.login. And data. This is about setting sessions, which we don't need, so we just want to. Okay, yeah, so almost the same exact route. So let's just go back to our terminal and make sure we're all saved and run turbo deploy. And let's jump back to our project. And again, I know this is, we should probably move most of this to a common component. We really should have all this in the same component, like, and just say, give it a different route or something, but I don't want to get too complicated right now. So we're just going to take all of this and go back to login. And, well, sorry, let's go back here to our register. And let's just take everything from constructor to the end of the component to styles. If we come here, we can paste that, and let's just change view style. Okay, let's change our button to say login. We'll call this function login. And here, let's change this to login. And then the difference right here, instead of sign up, it's going to be a login route. And body. See, everything else looks like it's going to be the same. So let's go back to also to our instaclone root and just put this back on top where it was when we started. And then we also want to go to our login, and let's just make another button at the bottom that says, that links to our other page. So it's going to say on press this.props.navigation.navigate to register, I believe we called that. Yeah. And we just got to give it a title. And the title is going to be no account, sign up here. Title equals, I forgot a closing brace. Okay. See how that looks. Style sheet not defined. Just import your style sheet at the top here. Okay, I'm going to pull this over so we can see. So we can go through our flow and see if it's working or not. Alright, so pretend we don't have an account. We can click to this page. This is now our register page, and we can go back. So no account, sign up here. Gonna call this YouTube viewer at Gmail. PASSWORD. Sign up. All right, so that must have been a success. And let's refresh the app, and let's try to log in now. So YouTube viewer at gmail.com. I'm gonna purposely put in the wrong password here just to see what happens. Oh, well, okay. So let's import our config. See, that's what I'm saying. These should be like almost the same exact components. All right. Well, that's not even the right login name, so hold on. Let's put in the wrong password. Let's see what it says. Oh, you know what? Let's alert our error here, because we want the user to see this, you know, if there's wrong password or something. Alert error.message. I don't think we should have to stringify it, but let's just log it again for now. Sorry, guys. Let's reload the debugger. All right, and let's see what happens there. Object. Let me just stringify the whole error. I think this might have something to do with the library again. Like before, we had to stringify the response. I bet you it's something with fetch. All right, let me just check the docs real quick. Networking. Error. Also, what turbo we don't really know what kind of error we're providing, so that's the, or wait, hold on. Where do we throw that error? Sorry, something went wrong. And response. Let's just log this response right here. Okay, so right here we have confirmation fail, message user not found. We're not properly throwing that error. So throw if JSON response dot confirmation equals success, else throw new error. Throw new error. 1 second. Okay, we shouldn't be keying this here. We just want to throw the error like this. Let's try this one more time. Confirmation fail, user not found. Throw new error. See, for some reason our error is not making it to our end of our promise chain. So give me 1 second. Maybe it's not new. Hold on. I could have sworn it was, but see, we get this fail on 42. It's not going to our catch block, which is what I want to resolve before we. I want these error messages all kind of come in one place. So what we need to do is we need to throw the error as we were doing. One of the mistakes we had was I was giving it this message key, which we don't want, and we were trying to key it with message and then call error.message down here, which is not what we want. So we just give it the message like that, and then down here we were logging error. Basically, we had two halves and never got them all working. Error doesn't have a error.message property when you log it, just because it's not a standard JavaScript object, I guess. So you want to call error.message, and that should work. So let's just try this again. And let's open up this test. I won't even put in a password. And then we hit the right case, and then right here we get sorry something went wrong at 51, which is right here. Now, the one thing we want to adjust is we don't want to say something went wrong. We want to pass that helpful error message from the backend to the user. So what we're going to do is JSON, well, what does the actual response say? Oh, we have this message here. So our error is going to be JSON response dot message. And then what we're trying to do is get this, wrong password, wrong user server response through to the error alert. So again, just to reiterate, we get a success from the server, which is why our promise chain doesn't go to catch. We have to make our own error. So if our confirmation isn't a success, if it's success, we want to go to the main app. If not, we want to throw this error, and the error is going to be the message from the server. Again, we don't add a message key in the error, and then in the actual error, you refer to it as error.message. So let's give that a try, and I want to alert this out. User not found. Okay, now let's try an incorrect password. At this point, I probably user not found. Maybe it's YouTube viewer. I think I made it. All right, forgot it. Test 7@aol.com. All right, so I made that user. So user not found. The one thing I'm wondering if is by default we give a user not found, which some websites do, because you don't want people to know who signed up for your site. So if they say wrong password, then they know that there's an account there. It's easier to hack. It's kind of standard practice, actually. That could be what's going on here. Yeah, okay, so it's by default giving user not found. That's kind of like a standard practice again, because you don't want to reveal who has an account. Then it's easier to hack, so that's what's going on here. But let me type in my real password now and see if we're authenticated, which we are not. So we're doing something wrong. Email password. Or I could have actually forgot my password. User not found. Okay. Log in. Let's just log these credentials before I ship them off. Email, password. Okay, that looks good. Email, password. And let's just check the documentation again. Email, password. We're going to post to log in. And let's just check our data store to see what we're working with here. Email. You know what? I think I think we need to lowercase. I think by our text input is uppercasing our users, and they should be lowercase. So let's try that real quick. So credentials.email equals this.state.credentials to lowercase. Okay, let's try that real quick. And then we want to just send off credentials. So we're lowercasing our input on send. I think that could be our issue here. And also we could turn off on the text input to stop doing that. This.state.credentials.to lowercase. Credentials.email to lowercase. All right. All right, so it worked. So I just want to try one more time on those error messages. So basically, our text input is uppercasing our first letter, which I believe we can turn off. Let me do that. Let's hit auto capitalize. Yeah, let's turn this off. That should just resolve that issue. And also, who knows what our password is, so let's turn that off there. Okay. And I believe it's off by default on the secure one because that seemed to be working. But let's just refresh. So I'm going to make a new user. Password 1234567 All right, I'm going to sign him up. And that worked. Now I'm going to log out or refresh. I'm going to go log in. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Wrong password. Now before I said it could have been a security thing. Also we had this capitalization issue which has been fixed. So let's see. Incorrect password. That's what we wanted. We want to get these helpful error messages. So now if I put the right password in, we're logged in. So we're all set. I know there's a bit of like troubleshooting and stuff going on, but I kind of want to demonstrate that's what happens if you're working with new libraries and apps and stuff, and kind of you know, how to find your way around. So we did get a lot done. The navigation stuff is pretty big, and like nesting those navigators. So that's pretty useful. But now we have all these different layers and log in. And so when we log in, we get that user back, which is important because now we can start making posts and tying them to the user. So that's kind of like a necessary. I mean, today's is probably like the least fun of the 4 sections because dealing with boring stuff like authentication, navigating. But now that we have that, we can, you know, set up the camera, set up our profile, all that kind of stuff. So it's kind of a necessary evil. And thanks for bearing through it. Next up, now that we have our user created, we're going to create the camera piece and upload our photos. And then those are also going to all tie into our profile. So that'll be pretty neat. And then we're going to change the feed to just get all the available photos from the user. So those are going to be our next 2 videos, and maybe some additional styling and whatnot. But yeah, this is kind of the most painful, but the idea of the login and sign up and the flow, the authentication stuff is not that fun, but it's kind of necessary for most apps. But the good thing is once you set it up once on your app, you're done and you can focus on the fun stuff. Yeah, so that's it for today. I'll catch you guys in part 3, and see you soon.